What's going on, everybody? This is Epic Ness repping The Legend of Spyro, The Eternal Night. A very slept on speed game, if I must say so myself. It's going to have a lot of fast paced action, a lot of incredible movement chains, a lot of just like unprecedented, out of bounds, which is, despite being a beat 'em up reboot of the Spyro series, we're going to see very little combat, and I think it's going to be something you all very much enjoy. So we're just going to dive right into it, and things are going to go off the rails really quickly. All right, time starts as soon as I skip this cutscene. Sorry, just making the load, make sure that that's all Gucci. Here. What's going on, folks? This is Epic Ness here to rep The Legend of Spyro, The Eternal Night. Honestly, a very slept-on speed game. You're going to see a lot of incredible classics and beloved types of tricks across speedrunning, despite being a beat-em-up platformer reboot of the original Spyro series. You're going to be seeing very little combat. Going to be a lot for you folks to enjoy here. Just setting up the save file before getting into things, but you're going to see a lot of incredible movement chaining, a lot of burst movement options, just like all kinds of sharp out of bounds movement, resource management, all kinds of incredible tricks await us. So let's just jump right into it here. Time is going to start after I skip these couple of cutscenes. Alright. Time starts now, and immediately this run is going to go off the rails, almost literally. We're going to jump over here and just kind of stand on this mushroom for a little bit, you know, just kind of stretch the legs out. No, actually, so this is a trick called super slipping, affinitively named after super swimming from Wind Waker. Sort of similar idea to that trick is that when Spyro walks against a slippery surface, normally they push you off and there isn't really any ability to move or jump on them. But if you walk in a certain way, it will actually keep Spyro still and the game will continuously add backwards movement. We're going to use that, angle us using that little ridge there, and it's going to hit this cutscene trigger way further in the level. We're supposed to... That alone will save us like 8 minutes, but this game also has somewhat of a Metroidvania type structure going on, where throughout the game you unlock a couple breath abilities, and some of them are very much required for completing the game. So right now, we're far past the point in which you would acquire the fire breath, and there's a handful of puzzles in this level that do require it. So that's going to be our next major hurdle. We're going to use another trick here to get a lot of vertical capabilities here. Using this strafe mechanic, kind of similar to Z targeting, we're able to use a strong attack to be able to then double jump while locked on to this enemy, and that's going to both allow us to stay locked onto this enemy much further on than we're normally allowed to, as well as we're going to do a trick here called strafe jumping, where you can regain your jump in mid-air, And you can also do it after a double jump by interrupting the strafe with a strong attack, and that's just going to let us get on top of these platforms, or these pillars, excuse me, and we're just going to do some tight little glides. Pretty much all of the level geometry sticks out slightly further than as visually indicated, like inside the level. So we're able to just kind of cling along the sides here, cut across using some props along the walls, some bones of one of the enemies. There's a lot going on here. A lot of very tight movement. Also worth noting, if you fall at any point, there is no death trigger or anything, so that's just all void. And now doing another glitched strong attack against a sloped surface there. There's a very interesting buffer system in this game that just, like, if you hold the strong attack, you end up able to do it on sloped surfaces. So if you're able to get that strong attack out before the sloped surface actually gets a chance to push Spyro off, you end up being able to jump again, as the game considers Spyro grounded for a short period of time. And so with all of that, you're able to jump around and hit that trigger, which is the only autosave section in the whole level that we're able to get that will also allow us to get our fire breath, because the game just automatically assumes once we quit out and reload. And that in totality, probably like 10, maybe 15-minute time save. Now that did grant us, as you see, a little bit of an odd movement option. It's called the Comet Dash, and it acts both as an air dash as well as some quick burst movement on the ground. It's going to be a huge utility both in combat, but especially in movement, as it lets you move faster than Spyro's sprint, as well as being able to clear massive gaps in short periods of time. No glide needed. Now, it does consume magic is on a bar in this game, as you can see, indicated by the green in the top left. So we will occasionally have to either beat enemies or find these crystal clusters to refill. Now, we're also going to use the Comet Dash has very high knockback as well as hit stun. It is a hard move to land just because it has with Spyro careening forward, it's very easy for you to miss an enemy, but if you land kind of center on like I did there, you end up getting like 5-6 melee hits in, and you can just eviscerate enemy health bars. So once they get locked in place there, you can make quick work of them. So you are locked in the one angle once you use it, however, and can only use it once every time Spyro is airborne. So you do have to use it wisely and also be just like very acutely aware of where you want your Comet Dash to go, how you want it to connect and line up with these enemies. Here I just do some brief combat, going to try and goad these enemies into grouping up, because the Comet Dash hitbox is large enough to be able to catch a couple enemies at once. Just using some melee attacks as well to try and steady enemies once I get close enough to them to follow up. And there we go, going to reach our first boss of the game. Nothing crazy here, it's this just simple little strafe minigame type of thing where you charge fireballs. You can hit the boss under the stage to make the cycles, pretty meaningless. Able to get rid of him in just a couple seconds, honestly. And there we go, that is already the first level. Now, there is going to be fairly extensive out of bounds on the majority of levels, but this upcoming level, Grove, is actually going to showcase more so the core movements in Spyro's toolkit. And you're also going to see here, I'm quickly going to quit after making sure the game saves and reload. That's also going to be a recurring thing. As I briefly stated earlier, when you load a save, the game just sort of automatically assumes certain flags. So on top of this game having a lot of the cutscene triggers just constantly active, it also assumes game state. So once we reload here, we're going to regain dragon time, which is basically just like, you know, bullet time. It's a slow-mo thing, and there's a handful of puzzles later on that pretty much require it. We're going to use it minimally, like right there. I stood on a little enemy spawner there just to try and steady myself and then be able to lock onto an enemy there, get a quick little triple jump, skip having to climb this slow waterfall, and now just triggering this little ambush here. Try and get these hounds to collect real quick. And you'll also notice I try to finish off enemies with fire breath. That's just a minor optimization, as it has a much faster death animation as opposed to having to watch the enemy kind of like collapse and groan. Okay. So another useful asset is that the Comet Dash does do a lot of melee damage to interactables as well, so you'll see me use it on occasion to hit switches or break obstacles like that. Coming up here briefly just to collect one of these masks. They just increase your melee bar at the top, and over time that's going to give us a lot more Comet Dashes to use. Like, every upgrade gives you like 1 or 2 per bar, and every time we stop to refill is like a whole other bar. And that also gives us a lot more flexibility for some of the boss fights later on. So yeah, anytime we stay grounded, we pretty much are trying to just use Comet Dash as much as possible. Otherwise, you're going to see like a lot of like quick like double jump, Comet Dash, and then like horn dive to land back on the ground and just kind of continue our momentum because of that burst speed that you get from jumping, from Comet Dash. And you may have also noticed in their mix of the air attacks, they'll be more important in sections like this dream and like in that first level, where you don't have the luxury of Comet Dash. That pretty much just gives you a short little burst up and in whatever direction you aim Spyro. So while you're airborne, you really can redirect yourself like 2, sometimes 3 different times, both because of Spyro's glide, of course, but then also the air attack can be used to move yourself in any direction, and then same with the Comet Dash. So there's a lot of flexibility in Spyro's movement, and there's a lot of ways to approach the various skips in the game. So despite the fact that this game is a fairly punishing game at times, depending on the route you take, there are a lot of backup strats and frankly just so many flashy ways to approach things that just make it accessible for all levels and fairly marathon safe, despite what some of these out of bounds may appear. This is one of those levels in which you unlock the breaths. The one for fire we were able to skip, but with that massive out of bounds momentum. Unfortunately, the walls around Grove, as well as the distance for the next section, it's just way too far apart and way too high of an obstacle for Spyro to be able to gain enough speed or launch anywhere. So we will be seeing 2 of these dreams, and there is a little bit of photosensitivity want to warn about in relation to this use of Dragon Time. It does flashbang the screen, as well as using the Ice Breath occasionally. It is necessary in some sections of the game where it locks you to using Ice Breath. So, you know, if you'd want to put like a full photosensitivity warning over the run or during those sections. And also for these Fury attacks can also be pretty intense. That would definitely be advised. But all of that being said, I do believe these dream segments pretty minimal time save stuff, so they make good time for donations. Okay. So speaking of the core movement, this next sector, it can be very tricky, but it is one of the most fluid in regards to core movement. We're going to come across like a couple poison lakes, and as we saw in that dream, you are able to use the ice breath to create like ice platforms, kind of similar to ice arrows in the Zelda games. Briefly, I'm going to be stopping and collecting a couple of these blue gems. We're going to use that later on just to upgrade one breath towards the end of the game. And it's also worth noting the crystals actually you get better return by staggering your hits, because the game just literally doesn't account for having that many particles on screen and doesn't like load it properly or something whenever you go to collect them. So it's better to just single hit them. Okay, this is a little dicey here, but with the strafe jump and darn, that you're able to jump on that little tree root there, as well as like, you know, all this triple jumping, quadruple jumping, all the kind of stuff that strafe jump allows you to do in Comet Dash. But sometimes you're just moving so fast, you just like barely miss one, and you know, the damage floor sends you all the way back. So, but you know, still a good showcase. Now there is a big cutscene trigger here, but not big enough. If we like just jump really high and cling along the left side of the wall, there is a large enemy encounter that's skipped here. Same with hovering over that pond. There is this little tugboat or whatever you want to call it that normally transports a couple enemies over, but we're actually going to use it, slowly wait for it to oscillate up, and then just barely be able to double jump and air attack to catch that slim little ledge peeking out from under that log. And that's also going to skip an assassin refight over all that whole section there. I know it's hard to gauge, but that does skip a handful of minutes, probably like a 3 or 4 minute section, even with being able to strafe jump around things. It is a massive, massive new find. So now we're just kind of heading towards the end of this section here. Gotta kill a couple enemies. The ice ball also does activate crystals nearby, weirdly enough, because it also has some some melee properties. So if you stand next to a magic crystal, it will actually just like replenish your magic pretty much at infinitely, because it will drop gems, but it won't actually count as depleting that crystal. Normally you're only able to hit them 3 times, but yeah, well-made game. This was a game that was like crunched out in a year using a lot of assets from the first game, so there is a lot of jank, and I do think that that does aid to a lot of the oversights in the buffer system in some of the movement. Like, Comet Dash was meant as a movement tool, but definitely not to the extent that we use it in this run. So here, just kind of doing some large jumps and glides over a bunch of treacherous branches, and all these platforms, like these jellyfish, they can shock you, and then the branches also fall, so there is actually a lot of pressure to keep moving, especially for this tight cycle. I'm using Dragon Time just to be able to not have to wait for those jellyfish to roll around again. And then this jump is pretty weird. Normally it wants you to kind of wait out a cycle there as well, but you can barely catch that ledge as well. And here is another super treacherous jump. If you mess this up, you have to do that whole jellyfish sector again. So it's always a super clutch moment, because sometimes you'll like ricochet off the ledge like that and have to kind of hold your breath, hoping that the air attack comes out in time and is able to push you up and over. So yeah, this is Spyro's charge. You don't honestly see it that much in the run anymore, just given like how optimized it's become. I have been running this game like on and off, but also like pretty consistently for like 10 years. So it has seen a lot of iteration, and recently also had a little bit of revival thanks to some interest from the Ratchet and Clank speedrunning community, actually. Shoutouts to Azok, definitely got my motivation going again, and he also found the a lot of the strafe jump utility that we see. Now this is kind of like the final boss of that strafe system we had seen earlier. This guy is obnoxious, casually and just in general design-wise. You're supposed to strike each of his limbs 3 times, and you have to like hold the button to charge your fireball, you know, different amounts to be able to reach different heights and distances to strike each limb. But he also can spin off the flames to heal. It's really not choreographed very well. But what we can do is just set each limb ablaze, or hit each limb twice, set one ablaze, let him heal off, and then just clear everything in a moment. And then this boss, on the second phase, pretty much just a spam and win kind of thing. So this is another good moment for donations. There's some mild RNG stuff, but really nothing major to report here. While I have the moment, it is actually worth noting we're running on the PS2 version, which normally not a speedrunner's best friend, but it is, the strafe tech is version exclusive. We do accept emulator runs, however, as well on their own board, so the game is fairly accessible at this point. And does not require nearly as intricate of an understanding of the game's level layout and combat. That had always been a kind of a stopping point for a lot of people. Not that the combat's bad, we will see some sections showing it off later, but it just can get very intricate. Just as far as spacing and resource managing with your magic. Okay, so this is actually one of the craziest skips in the whole game. So this level, you're supposed to fight 3 bosses, do one of those dream levels, and then this kind of has classic Spyro level design where you start at the bottom, loop up and around, you go through this like prisoner section, and then like it's crazy. So here we're strafing to get onto the platform that the captain is on. And actually, we're at the back of the last ship that you travel in this fleet through a very tight strafe jump comet dash by keeping those scorpions close by. Now we just have to kind of cling along here because you can just fall and die or get sent back to the boss arena, have to redo everything. But if you're careful and then just glide around, there's a thin gap where you can push Spyro through and hit the trigger to fall into that room, and that will spawn the boss, saving like literally 20 minutes. And that was like one of the hardest levels to break as well, because it's super enclosed and actually has ceilings, unlike most of the other levels. Now this boss becomes pretty troublesome. Normally we would have Earth Breath at this point, and that has this really high damage move that can pretty much just like zero to death, like chew through health bars. But we have to rely on Comet Dash and melee attacks. Normally you have to like wait for the boss to stop and stuff, but since the boss is hourglass shaped, or like I guess rather like a funnel, whenever you jump and do an air attack, Spyro is influenced by like the slopage of whatever he's coming against. So if you do an air attack really close to the ground, the boss's frame can actually push you back into the ground. So instead of being like staggered between like your ground combo and your air combo, you can keep switching back and forth between your ground and air attacks and continue to keep the boss stuck in place. They don't really have nearly as much hit stun as normal enemies, so it's very crucial to like pay attention to how many hits you are getting in, because like they flinch on every, I think, third hit. And you also have Comet Dash to try and, like, if you drop the combo or, you know, you're just in an odd spot, try and reset that. But, you know, once you drop it, the boss gets just, like, all on guard, and you kind of have to wait it out to be able to approach it again. Now, this level is going to be really interesting as well. This is a large airship level, and of course, with it being air, no walls, we're going to do a really, really huge super slip. It is fairly precise, however. I am going to have to stay on this. Firstly, you have to glide to the ship and not land on it. You have to just land on this cannon, because if you land on the ship, you end up getting this checkpoint that will mess up the skip. And there's also a giant death barrier that kind of cuts off half of the level that you can potentially ram into when you launch off of this. And you just have to, it's kind of like ESS position. You hold your stick just slightly off from center to keep Spyro in this position, and we're literally going to do this for like 1:15 seconds, so this is another potential donation point. Now, the difference about this super slip, however, is that we're actually not going to use this speed like straight from this angle. We're actually going to end up dying mid super slip here. And there's going to be some very interesting results that occur from that. This was something that, like, took forever to lab out, but it makes this level, like, so sick. Okay, so we hit the death berry. Now what's going to happen is we're going to respawn, and the spawn point in this level is actually airborne, and we build up so much speed that it did not fully deplenish upon death. So we're going to glide, hold left to be able to scoot around the death barrier, and then I just look for a couple visual cues of some of the mass, look for this ship in the back and time things, and then we're going to be able to just glide right on down to the boss arena. So Scab thought he got away from us, but we're coming back with a vengeance here. Although it seems like he is as well. Alright, so here is that Earth Breath I was talking about with the first Scab fight. Looks like he's given us a little bit of trouble, but as you can see, like, even just with the one upgrade, it does huge chunks of damage, and there's some sort of glitch where if the ball that Spyro spawns, it's like this wrecking ball kind of thing he swings around for the Earth Breath. If it's not out for more than a short, like, fraction of a second, it actually won't deplete your magic bar fully. So you could see, even though it's on a fraction of stamina or magic or whatever there, I was able to continue just slamming on Scab and just, like, completely trivializes that boss. Alright, so now for the Lightning Dream. This actually does have a few interesting skips in it. One of which I could have done in the Ice one as well, but just for safety and consistency's sake, just showing it off here. So, again, no Comet Dash, but you can get literally 4 jumps off of any enemy. And enemies are plentiful in this game, including in the tutorials. So if you are very particular, you can barely make that gap across and not have to complete that section of the tutorial while still obtaining that move. The cutscene after Scab also sends us directly into this dream, so there's no feasible way to skip this, that we know of. There are some more recent discoveries where you can actually perform this dream while having other elements at your disposal. But with it being fairly recent and also a very difficult trick, I've opted not to go for it. So this is one of the first showcases of lightning is actually going to become an even more broken aspect of our movement toolkit. So that lightning vortex has some incredibly strange properties. Namely that if you touch any surface after you come out of lightning vortex, well, okay, any floor or sloped floor, it will consider you grounded. So I was able to actually, like, slide off that platform for a little bit before you start losing height, and then extend, the reach of my jump to be able to skip another section there where it shows you how to use the lightning orb. It's just like this little detonation thing we'll see later. There's another trick I could potentially showcase as well, called a lightning jump, which gives Spyro, like, literally, like, I think 10 jumps worth of height or something obscene like that. Crazily enough, because there's so many odd ways to regain your jump, it ends up being sort of slow because you have to do this elaborate combo with an enemy to pull it off. But it's really sick. It is really hard to do without upgrading the element because it widens the margin of error for that trick. Now, this is going to be another one of the best levels as far as showcasing core movement. Now that we have Lightning Vortex in hand, you're going to see us rubbing up against walls and just inexplicably being able to strong attack. Those two are like peanut butter and jelly at this point. Like, Lightning Vortex was already excruciatingly broken, and you'd have to typically like slide off of a platform, but with the strong attack, you can turn like so many innocuous things into a place to refresh your jump. So, you know, those cylinders just completely end up being a free staircase. I shouldn't say free because the lightning vortex does consume a lot of magic as well. But nonetheless, here we actually pushed this enemy back. That's normally used for a cutscene. Okay, shoot. There's a way to get around this cutscene trigger by continuing to stay holding strafe on that enemy, but I was not able to get it. That does leave these statues active. They normally only activate when you... you're supposed to defeat these enemies, and they drop these orbs. Oh, orb moment. That you can push into these slots, and then you have to light them with a specific element. This is kind of like a Elemental Trials themed level, so you're going to get to see a bit of action from pretty much all of our tools. But yeah, it is kind of slow and a little laggy as well, so this can be a decent time for donations. Pretty much just trying to deal a lot of damage close to the sockets here, and just keeping track of our magic so that we can both unload the Earth Breath, but then also have enough magic recuperated to light up each orb. Which, unfortunately, I missed a gem or two and need to replenish here. Yeah. We'll see some more Lightning Vortex action here soon, after an excruciating PS2 performance moment. Okay, so now this is the hub for the trials. These levels actually exist behind the start of the level, but there's like a giant invisible wall. Really not feasible to get back to them. However, we can use the vortex and jump to be able to get around the archway of one of these doors and then glide down here. And this is actually the boss arena for the trials. And landing on this platform, even though you're not supposed to be able to access it, actually does still tell the game that you've completed the electric trial there. It defaults to. So that's going to save us. Normally you have to do one of each. This is the only level, really, where, like, the... there's multiple flags in check before it actually gives, lets one of the cutscene triggers spawn. So, as far as we know, you do actually have to get the game to see that you've completed enough trials to spawn the boss before reaching. The whole thing going on here, like, as you can see, this game's incredibly fast, and I like to let it speak for itself. So, you know, the plot is kind of secondary at this point. You're not seeing or engaging with a lot of it. But Spyro is basically trying to seek out this ancestral dragon that has been keeping track of history of the Dragon Realms, to try and determine what Spyro should do, given that this apocalyptic event, the Night of Eternal Darkness, is coming, and tied to that is the potential resurrection of a dragon of similar, like extreme power, like Spyro, able to control all the elements. So that's why there's this whole elemental theming thing going on. But as far as you guys need to know, like, this game is literally, we're going to the 9th dimension to defeat the giant monkey man. And... okay. So again, like, photosensitivity stuff here. The magic attacks work, like, separately from the melee attacks. So any instance in which we're able to use, whether it's the flame breath or this ice ball, it's literally just free chip damage so long as you have the magic to do it. This is that puzzle you need Dragon Time for, by the way. Those crabs run around at almost too fast a speed to catch without them. It's really cumbersome to set up hitting them without that. But, like, they have no cooldown, they have no, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, point being, you're able to actionably use magic and melee attacks at the same time. So it's the only, like, layered type of damaging we can do. The other attacks, like the Comet Dash, is considered, like, a magic melee attack, but you can't, like, do a Comet Dash while also using your melee attacks. But you can Comet Dash while using your Flame Breath. Stuff like that. We'll see that more in depth in the final level. There is a massive, massive combat section that does a good job showcasing that. Ice Trial, not too much going on there, so that could be another potential donation spot. Just a couple little ledges along that cliff, as well as lining up a tricky shot to light that one orb along the wall down there to progress. Now, Fire Trial, on the other hand, can be pretty intense. Now, throughout the game thus far, we haven't had that much combat, but there also hasn't been that much impeding us, because Comet Dash just, like, if you are good at aiming it, you can get enemies to flinch and then just abuse that. Now, there's a couple enemies coming up with really large health bars, as well as the ability to block and just not really flinch. They don't flinch nearly as much as most enemies in the game, and I'm referring to these stone sentinels. So we're going to use this technique here where I Comet Dash from as far of a distance as I possibly can. And when you do that, you actually get this bonus damage. And while the enemy is stunned in that, they also can take that damage. So if you thread that needle, you can just melt their life bar as well. I didn't quite get it on that second enemy, but otherwise they can be a real pain, because they can block, and they also have attacks that literally will stun you in place for like 2-3 seconds, and they can potentially 0 to death you. Here we're just gonna good old environmental damage, baby. Yeah, most people that have played these games casually will tell you throwing enemies off cliffs is the most cathartic part of playing them. Because admittedly, the combat can be jank and frustrating at times. But in this game, there is a slow-mo attached to headbutting enemies off cliffs. So we don't do it all that often. So there, the enemies are just like so close and have such high health bars that it ends up being worthwhile to nudge them off. That mask I just picked up, you can actually collect during the cutscene and get spawned right back, but I messed that up, so that's the other significant time save in here. That button can also be a bit tricky because its movement is semi-random. Like, it has a couple different paths that it can choose. Okay. And now that surprise comet dash from a distance, we're going to replicate on this boss to much easier and much greater effect. Because he just doesn't shield from far away and has a much wider hitbox, so it's very easy to just get caught on him. Okay, so we've completed 3 trials thus far. We did electric by doing that out of bounds. We did ice, and now we've done fire. So you're probably thinking, okay, now we have to do earth. Well, weirdly enough, that is also not the case. We're actually going to reload the game here. And as I mentioned, when you load a file, it pretty much just checks where you are in the game, like what the autosave point was, and what the, like where you are in terms of how much gems you have and how upgraded your breaths are. Everything else like has a default. And as it turns out, the default in this level is to have that trial completion platform available. So we're actually going to get out of bounds here again and glide back on. And despite the fact that this defaults to the lightning trial, it seems that the game pretty much just checks to see that you've completed 3 trials. And then once you complete another, it's like, okay, you're good now. Everything else it's really particular about. Like, you can't complete electric trial 4 times through that that method. But, you know, we'll take what we can get. Unfortunately, that cutscene skip to, like, that orb fight skip that I missed earlier, prevented me from showing off another way to reach there for the first time, so that they are like actually different setups, but not a big deal. This boss is a bit of an RNG thing as well. You're hoping to see it's only able to be damaged by the element matching its color, and it will change that at random, so that's why I took a death there. You're hoping to see Earth Breath for obvious reasons we showed off during Scab, or Lightning, because Vortex actually ends up being broken for combat as well. So normally it's already really strong because, like, it comes out instantaneously, massive moving hitbox, makes you invincible, launches enemies up, decent damage, but it consumes a lot of magic. However, there's a glitch where if you use it in the air, initiate it, and then quickly swap elements, you are able to continue using the Vortex while it utilizes the magic draining properties of the other element that you switch to. So since Comet Dash, or with Fire, there is no hold action for that button, it's just a press, it actually does not drain your magic at all. So you can just keep using Vortex with no downside. Now here, we're actually going to mash Vortex again to be able to get this weird propulsion jump off of that little chain there. And then we can also strong attack off the invisible walls to get more refresh jump again, reach around and hit this cutscene trigger like another like minute or 2 into the level. And we're just gonna die and reload here so that this cutscene works properly. We need an enemy here for the strafe jump. This is going to be the most complex trick in the run by far. So I use a lightning orb to try and stun the enemy there so that if they get too close, this high angle prevents you from actually locking onto them. So I then jump up onto that bramble, turn the camera to get locked on, jump around, use vortex to curve around, get out of bounds. Then I have to do a comet dash to land on these stalactite, stalagmite be one. Not sure on that, but then you can do a jump and horn dive to get a little bit of extra height before you then use vortex to scoop yourself over the tunnel here. And you do that a couple times. Like I said, vortex also kind of saves your floor properties. So there's a lot of like small floors here, but I'm able to catch them using vortex and get jumps around the tunnel. You still have to know where they are because you can only use vortex once in midair. So if you miss one of those ledges, the run is effectively over. Or, well, you reset at the that enemy spawn. Then you have to use vortex to get an extended jump, barely almost reaching that other ledge out of bounds. I saw these enemies spawn out of the corner of my screen. That's how I knew I hit the checkpoint trigger. And then you can die and respawn at the other end of this cliff, and that saves like another 4 or 5 minutes over a massive combat section back there. So now here, we're going to get a lot of use out of the vortex. This being a very vertical level, there isn't really that much room for, like, especially when you see the back half of this level. Like, this is like a mountain fortress that the big bad is living in, right? And there's this whole cinematic crawl up it. So you'll see here, like, there's just literally this straight up 90-degree wall. We're forced to do this insane combat section here. So we only have one upgrade. We are going to do a lot of micromanaging between using lightning orb. If you launch an enemy twice, normally they just go up like so high and then come down, but you can launch them again in midair and they'll die from fall damage because they've got launched high enough. And then we're also going to be trying to utilize the lightning vortex infinite trick. However, some of these enemies are able to block, and that can knock you out of the lightning vortex. We try to use it as much as possible because it does damage multiple enemies at a time. But sometimes you are also pressed to just gun for magic, and so you might have to switch to Earth Breath and just like chew an enemy down to get gems to be able to kind of restart your position. These bull riders are going to be like the hardest ones to deal with just because every time they get touched by the vortex, they get like swirled up into the air, so you don't get like that rapid hit thing going on. You kind of just have to keep track of their health and keep chipping away at them while working on all the other enemies and trying not to get blocked by them. Now you can also bait them to like charge at you off the ledge. And again, trying to launch them twice, but depending on their attack pattern, they can end up like just barreling through it. As we saw briefly there. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in this fight. And a lot of just uncomfortable situations. It used to be that we had a fury attack here, like the screen wipe that you learn at the end of the dreams. That made this fight like a lot safer because, you know, it's a screen wipe and you're invincible. But, you know, without that, and no health upgrades, like, you can get killed in like 4 hits in this fight, and there's no like there's no period after Spyro gets hit where, you know, there's no grace period. You just keep taking damage. So 5 enemies can hit you at the same time and just drain all of your health. Okay. So now just a quick, stupid skip. If you cling against this wall very tightly, you can avoid a boss trigger there. That literally took me 10 years to find. I Actually, I can't even take credit for that. That was a Zoc. I thought for sure this would never be skipped, and now it is. And it's a little in-joke for me because at the end of the first level, that guy, the assassin out for Spyro, says, "You haven't seen the last of me." I was like, man, he's right. We can't route this guy out. Because you fight him again here, but now he is no more. So this is just like a little cinematic moment, waiting to climb up this mountainside. So this is another good little donation moment. Yeah. We got one last incredible final, out of bounds coming up here. And then we're going to gear up for the final boss, which will be pretty interesting because they take away all of our magic tools. So we're going to get caught in this little, there's a little rock sticking out against this, this archway here we need to get caught on, which was kind of same concept as within the trials. And as you can see, the whole archway is not solid on the outside, so you have to land on a particular section of it. And then do a large comet dash out here to land on the outside of this corridor. And then we're going to try and catch the lip of this archway out of bounds and nudge our way along. We're so fortunate that some of the lazy asset use just means they have platforms sticking out of bounds like that. And we can jump along, like the bottom of this platform is cone shaped, so we can just like jump around the inside of it and hit the cutscene trigger from below. Once again, saving another like 3 minutes or so from another obscene, like they just dump dozens and dozens of enemies into a room and tell you to deal with it. Brutal final level. Equally brutal out of bounds skips to be able to circumnavigate them. And now the only like significant cutscene we get to see in the game. So yeah, there is so much that went into just labbing out, finding the figuring out what types of platforms, how much they extend out of bounds. Mind you, I had very little tech growing up. I learned this and performed this all on regular hardware. Didn't have Dolphin or FreeCam or any of that, so like my knowledge of everything in the levels and the functionality of the types of platforms all just came from raw testing. So this fight, final big bad, the giant monkey man, the save the ninth dimension. We don't have any of our magic attacks, and this guy just loves to teleport around and not give you the time of day. So pretty much just kind of have to bait out his attacks, get him to do this jumping thing. Now they want you to avoid him and then just like use your dragon time to pile on a bunch of melee hits. But with this setup where I try to scooch him around the outside of the ring and then on the fifth jump, if you have him teeter over this middle ring in a certain way, his model will like slide and enter this glitched state where he gets stuck, and you can just keep hitting him over and over instead of having to do several cycles. Let me see if I can get it. Okay. Doesn't look like it's gonna happen this time, but pretty much the same principle overall. Just being able to recognize the startup on all of its attacks and knowing certain actions to try and force him to do this jump stab. It is also worth noting that that jump stab is always a one-shot, and it does have a tendency for its hitbox to also like desync, and so he'll be able to like hit you from where he jumped away from rather than where he's jumping towards. Alright, and now finally here, Spyro, we got all the Chaos Emeralds and are now just wailing away Sonic Frontiers style on this guy. This is another glitch. I switched to Ice to be able to do this. Dark Spyro has another incredible category all to its own where you can just do this air dash infinitely. That is another insane run to watch, but it's also great for combat here because we're able to lock Gull in place, and there's a tight area where you can get him to do these flinches where he takes a lot of damage. Wasn't that lucky this time around. Normally you have to like run around the arena, keep collecting gems, and just chip away at him, kind of like with the first phase, but with that, that's it. The boss just doesn't know what to do, and we're through. And that is time. To finish up the ice explanation, the reason that lets you do that infinitely is because Ice Tail, the ice attack, you're able to use infinite times in air. It's kind of like the glitch with Vortex, where Dark Spyro inherits the properties of the ice element. So you're just able to use that charge attack infinite times with no cooldown. Anyway, that is The Legend of Spyro: The Eternal Night. A lot to go over, a lot to take in, a lot of variety, flashy movement. I think it's something that people familiar with, whether it's the original trilogy, the Legend of Trilogy, the Ratchet and Clank games, or just none of the PlayStation era platformers. Like, this game has a lot of DNA as a speedrun, I feel like, that it shares with those, as well as carrying its own type of soul and identity. And it's just an incredibly fluid game. All of the moves, once you understand what their utility is in a speedrun setting, it becomes so intuitive, so fluid. The buffer system is very forgiving. So it's really just like a mindfulness and precision in terms of timing. Like when you interrupt your jumps with your Comet Dash, stuff like that. Oh yeah, I completely forgot to mention that, like, every, like, move that I was using to end a double jump, normally you're forced to, like, wait for a full double jump to come out, but you can shorten it. You have just so much control over Spyro in this game, it's insane. Like, I thought the proxies in the original trilogy were insane as far as air movement capabilities, but anyway, I'm starting to gush now. Absolute pleasure being able to showcase this, even if just in submission. Been an absolute blast growing up with GDQ, attending it the last couple years. Love hometown Pittsburgh. As far as like any additional showcases or anything like that, I can demonstrate the Dark Spyro techniques and a couple additional glitches. I understand that this is a fairly unpopular game, both speedrunning and casual-wise, but I think it is an incredible showcase of what a lot of people come to recognize universally in speedrunning. Universally loved things like, oh, so amazing, so amazing. Or maybe I could sing this song. But yeah. Thank you again for just giving me your time, attention, and inspiring me as well on my own speedrun journeys to have picked up and played this game seriously and extensively as I have. Please feel free to reach out to me about any type or time for inclusion of this game. I'd be delighted to demonstrate it under any circumstance. So, all right, I think that's going to be it for me. Yeah, Epic Ness, oh yeah, on Twitch. Epic Ness on Discord.